Hey everyone, it's Mr. Wildboy94. I hope you're doing well today. I have a book review that it's a sequel to the book I just reviewed just the other day here on the channel called The Hellbound Heart. This sequel, of course, also written by Clive Barker himself almost 30 years after that original book. In about 2015-2016 is when this was published. Clive Barker's The Scarlet Gospels. This book is essentially, again, a direct sequel to The Hellbound Heart if you've never read that. That is the inspiration, essentially, for... And here's the original book, by the way, The Hellbound Heart. This was the inspiration for a very famous horror movie series from the 80s that went on and on and on. It's about to get a new reboot in October, I think going to Hulu, called Hellraiser. Here's 1 and 2. Here is the collection with films 3 through Hellworld. I think it's 3 through 8 is what's in here. And then I have the previous 2 that came out. I saw one, have not seen the last one. Hellraiser Revelations, I saw this. I don't remember if I liked it or not. I think I did for the most part. I was like the only person on the planet who did. And the last one, the most recent one before the new reboot, is Hellraiser Judgment, which I have not watched. I bought all these films around the time of my honeymoon. When I was on my honeymoon, I bought the big pack from Walmart. And never watched this one yet. I've heard a lot of bad things. Anyway, I'm kind of a mild Hellraiser fan. As I said in my Hellbound Heart review, my favorite of the movies is easily Hellraiser Inferno. It's like a Silent Hill movie. If you haven't seen it, you're really missing out. I don't care if it's direct to DVD. It's a fantastic movie directed by Scott Derrickson, who did the Exorcism of Emily Rose and the first Doctor Strange movie. Very good horror film, in my opinion, personally, even if you're not a Hellraiser fan. Anyway, that original book, Clive Barker was so disappointed with adaptations of his work at that point, he directed the original Hellraiser movie and wrote it, and I think it's a perfected version of the Hellbound Heart novella. Now this right here, again, is a 460-page book. It's a big old one, and this is a very different take from the master of horror himself. As I said in my previous review, I'm not the biggest fan of Hellbound Heart. I liked it a lot more years ago when I read it. I'm not the biggest Hellraiser fan, as you know, too. The thing is, the Scarlet Gospels is very, very different from what I thought it was going to be, and I'm not entirely sure of where to start at with this. Of course, the original Hellbound Heart novel, or novella, is more of just a straight-up horror story, the kind of thing that Richard Lehman or Brian Keene would write. This new one, Scarlet Gospels, is very much more of a fantasy story, and it's almost like a retelling at certain points, well, for like 3/4 of the book, that are more of like a retelling of Dante's The Inferno, which is cool. I love that part of it, and I'll get more into that later on without telling you any spoilers. But for the time being, let's really start off with the basic story. I want to really start at the beginning of this book with the prologue. This was a little weird. It took me off guard at first. I wasn't entirely sure what's going on here because, again, this is more of a fantasy story, fantasy horror type of thing. There is magicians, and they just brought one of the magicians back to life who had been killed, who may have been one of the strongest ones who had been killed by Pinhead himself, which, by the way, Pinhead shows up here to basically brutalize all of these guys, and he does it in the most demeaning, especially 2 of these people, one of the most demeaning, awful ways I've ever seen somebody get brutalized in fiction, ever. This is probably the goriest I've ever seen Clive Barker's work out of the 3 or 4 books I've read from the guy. And again, I'm not a massive Clive Barker fan, but this book showed me how far he'd come along, and it's kind of like in a Dr. Sleep type of way. It's so different from the original book that a lot of people are going to complain about this who are massive fans of Hellbound Heart, I think. But people like myself who are not massive fans of Hellbound Heart, in some regard I like this more, but in some ways, not being a fantasy fan, I'm not really sure entirely how I feel about it. It's a little bit of a mixed bag in some regards, but for the most part, I had a good time, I'll be honest with you. Because especially if you like gory stuff, whoa, there's a lot of gore in this book. Now, the prologue here with Pinhead, who just in the first chapter, of course, all of us know who are big Clive Barker fans, he always hated when people on the set of Hellraiser called Pinhead Pinhead. He was supposed to be just listed as the lead Cenobite, and from like the second film onward, he was listed, Doug Bradley's character was listed as Pinhead. And Clive Barker hates that, but he also went ahead and projected a little bit, and he had it written in the book, when you're reading from the perspective of Mr. Pinhead himself, that he hates being called Pinhead by his enemies, and that gives him an excuse most of the time to murder you even worse, you know? It's pretty horrifying. Anyway, Pinhead himself shows up, he brutalizes these magicians, and when I say magicians, it's not just your simple a bunch of weirdos that do magic tricks, like card tricks and stuff. It's not like that, it's like actual black magic type of people. And kind of an order of brotherhood type of stuff. Again, it was the first step into this, and I was like, at first I was like, am I gonna like this? It got a little weird for me. I didn't know what to expect with this. Of course, I went into the book completely blind, not knowing any reviews, just knowing that the reception on this was not very good as a book. That's all I knew about. It came out so long ago, like 7 years ago. I think Clive Barker wrote this book not just as being inspired to write a new book, but this was a new Hellraiser book. We haven't had anything like this from him, aside from some comic book stuff way back in the day. It seems to me like he hates the direction the movies went so deeply, and the way they constantly call Pinhead, Pinhead, that he just wanted to make like a rebuttal to all of that, and really make a hardcore Pinhead, the Hell Priest, whatever you want to call him. He's typically known as the Hell Priest in this book. Whatever you'd like to call that Doug Bradley character. He is so freaking scary in this book. He's so intimidating. The way Doug Bradley played him in films, I don't even care about that much. He is so intimidating, and he's fun to read. There's so much in here based around Pinhead, and if you love the original book but you're sad because you don't get that much of a view from Pinhead's perspective, seeing him do things and whatever, just like in the original movie Clive Barker adapted from it, if you're disappointed by that, this will make up for all of that, I think. However, the fantasy elements kind of get in the way a little bit. Let me really get to the main storyline here. We have a fellow named Harry, who is apparently a character, Harry D'Amour, who is a character in some other Clive Barker stuff. I don't know what it is. I think I read somewhere there's a short story or a comic or something called Lord of Illusions that Barker had done. Mind you, Barker had not written a book, apparently, at least in the horror genre, in a long time until this came out, the Scarlet Gospels. Anyway, Lord of Illusions, apparently, I think is what I read in here. Harry was in that book as like our protagonist or whatever, and he's kind of like a supernatural cop. He doesn't really have any abilities. He has some tattoos and stuff that give him warnings when he's in danger and that kind of thing. That was pretty cool. Something I've kind of seen, a little bit of a differential type of thing in Jonathan Mayberry's Ink. I haven't read Ink, actually, but the other one that's tied to that, with the glasses on the cover, I forgot what it's called. If you've read Jonathan Mayberry, you probably know what I'm talking about. But anyway, this particular detective has a friend who's a blind old black lady. She's been blind her entire life, but she can see ghosts. She'll actually see them come up to her even though she can't see anything else. And typically she just gets annoyed with these things. She just kind of bats them away, tells them to go away, leave her alone. And sometimes one of them can convince her that they need her help and they want her to help her or help them. And she will, sometimes. And in this case, she helps a particular fellow who's dead, who has a wife and kids and whatever, or kid, I don't know, something, some kind of family. And he tells her, Norma, hey, I need you to get this other detective, Harry D'Amour, to go to this clubhouse where me and some guys and some boys and whatever did some black magic ritual stuff. I don't want my wife and my family to find out about this stuff. Well, Harry decides to agree to do that, and he goes out to this place and he finds the Lemerchant's box, the Lament configuration, Lemerchant's configuration, whatever you want to call this thing. He finds it, and he starts tinkering with it, and of course you know how that typically goes. He opens up a portal to hell, and he happens to come across Pinhead. And things go really bad. Basically, after Harry is just barely able to get away from Pinhead, something goes terribly wrong. Norma gets kidnapped by Pinhead. And there's reasons for that. If you've read the book, you'll know why. But one of the reasons Pinhead is so after Harry for some reason, and it's kind of a little bizarre, I'm not sure how much I like it, even right now, after a couple of days of reading this and finishing it tonight, he for some reason wants Harry to basically be his apostle. He wants him to write, as the title shows, his Scarlet Gospels about the things that he's done with this new plan that he has. Pinhead essentially, in this book, has decided he's going to try to take down all of hell. He wants to just destroy everything, take it all over, and be the new lead, almost like the new Lucifer, if you will. And it's wild. You talk about a gory, crazy, fun adventure, and again, a fantasy type of horror story on top of that. If you like that kind of thing, I'm going to tell you right now, Scarlet Gospels is going to be more for you than it was for me. I don't even like this kind of thing, and I enjoyed the crap out of this. This is one of the few fantasy type things I've enjoyed, aside from like Harry Potter, a little bit of Lord of the Rings here and there, but for horror fantasy, this was fantastic in my opinion. It wasn't perfect or anything, but it was really fun to read. I had a good time. And this is the thing, Harry is usually a very straightforward guy. I like him, I like his persona, I like how he does things, and I like his relationship with Norma, the older lady that has been kidnapped by a Pinhead. Now, however, he has a group of friends, particularly one of the guys who did the tattoos for Harry, that let him know about different things, And all of these guys, about 3 or 4 of them, a couple of rescuers of his, they decide to get together and go into hell through a portal to try to rescue Norma from Pinhead. And essentially, this is when it becomes the Dante's The Inferno storyline of them basically working their way through hell, trying to catch up to Pinhead and Norma. And it's crazy. It is crazy, and again, it's very gory, very over-the-top, wild, crazy. If you like Pinhead using hooks to kill people, you have no idea what you're about to see in this book, The Scarlet Gospels. It's insane, and it's very, very well done. And again, a lot of people I talk to online typically think Hellbound Heart is very poetically written. To me, there's a lot of it that seems more amateur than poetic. I will tell you this, Clive Barker's writing here, most of the time, about 98% of the time, is absolutely beautiful. It's vivid, it's written in a way that I don't think anybody else, including the master of words Stephen King, could do. I don't think Charles Dickens could do the kind of style that Clive Barker did here. It's very detailed, but almost in a vague way for anything, from the demonic entities he fights in hell, Harry and his group I mean, or whether it be the buildings, the architecture in hell, the skies, the ground, anything. It's amazing to me how detailed this was. It was fantastic. You could look at this book as its own, being like a Scarlet Gospel of its own. And again, I say it again, if you are squeamish, this ain't the book for you, my friend. This is very gory, very insane, very over the top. It's not for the faint of heart. The conclusion of the book, again, I won't spoil anything for you, but it's crazy. As crazy as it is and how wild it is, I have to be honest with you, I don't know if I think it's underwhelming or not. It just kind of comes across to me just slightly underwhelming. I kind of wanted a bigger confrontation, and it's huge, don't get me wrong. It's a pretty enormous type of ending. The kind of things that go down at the end of this book, and the insanity that is hell in this book. If you love Dante's Inferno, I think you'll like this, by the way. As I've said numerous times, I just want you to know, if you love that as much as I do, I think you'll really, really dig this, and the vivid nature of it. It's very bizarre as a book, and very sexual, too. More sexual than Hellbound Heart was, as odd as that is to say. You may wonder, too, are any of the other Cenobites from the films, or from the Hellbound Heart novella, are any of those characters in here at all? No. I was kind of disappointed by that as well. It's kind of a bummer. It's mostly just focused on Pinhead and Harry and Norma, and it kind of goes around those different perspectives, and then some other character perspectives too that come in later on. But again, as big as the ending was, I was kind of let down with the final confrontation that was really happening, that I was like, I don't know who I root for in this situation. It's crazy. It's a really insane, weird read. One other thing I have to complain about too, the book being 465 pages long or whatever it was, the last, the epilogue in general is not like a 10-page epilogue. It's like a 60-page epilogue. It's too much. That should have been cut down tremendously. It did not need to be as long as it was. It could have been summarized very quickly. I think give each character like a chapter and then end it. That's not what happened. You have Harry gets 3 or 4 chapters in the epilogue about him and a couple of characters on the side. It was too much. It needed to be not there. Anyway, the Scarlet Gospels is not a perfect book or a perfect novel or anything, but I will tell you I was very happy with this at the end of the day. Well, a little while ago when I finished it. To read it over the course of 2 days, this is a very, very crazy, strong read. Again, whether you're a gore fan or a fantasy fan, if you're a Barker fan and a poetry fan, this has a lot for you just in general. But if you like all those other things too, fantasy, gore, action too, if you like battles, if you like all that stuff, this is really for you as well. The Scarlet Gospels may be very different from Hellbound Heart, but in my personal opinion, I think it's a little bit of an improvement. That's just me. I know a lot of people out there, big horror fans too, might not agree with that. But again, I compare it to Dr. Sleep versus The Shining. I figure, to me personally, at least when I read it years ago, I think Dr. Sleep is a better book than The Shining was. I think The Shining's bogged down with way too many details that just kind of bore me. The premise is great. Movie, original and the TV remake are fantastic. The Dr. Sleep movie's decent, but the Dr. Sleep book was my favorite thing from The Shining when I read it years ago, and it was released on hardcover for my original Mr. Wildboy 94 channel review. However, if you want something different, if you wanted to see Hellraiser go on a very different route, I don't know how much this honors the comic books, it probably doesn't, but I really liked it and I really want to recommend it to you. I enjoyed it quite a bit. If I had to rate the Scarlet Gospels on a 5-star basis, this big old 500 almost page book would easily get a 4 out of 5 stars from me. I have my complaints. I'm not a fantasy guy, as I've said numerous times, but this is very compelling, very crazy, and very adventurous. And I was very much in the place by the end of this book that I felt exhausted the way the characters probably did from all the trekking around in hell they had to do and all the fighting they had to do. It was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. And maybe it could have been trimmed up a little bit. I don't know. I feel like it needed to be there to feel like an arduous adventure. Anyway, so the thing is, I found out there is some other book out there called, I think it's Hellraiser the Toll, and it was not written by Clive Barker, but according to Goodreads, and according to some things I read online tonight after I finished Scarlet Gospels, it seems like that's considered canon. It seems like Clive Barker considers that canon, which kind of surprised me. So I am planning on trying to pick that up next. I think it's on Kindle for like $5. I'm hoping I can go in the other room right now and see if it's there. If it's not, and if I can't find my hands a copy real easy on eBay or Amazon or something, I might have to skip out on that. It's like a 100-page book, so it's like a short story, novelette, something. I don't know. So I might be able to find it, I might not. I'll try to get my hands on it too. I don't know if I can get my hands on any comics or anything from Hellraiser before this remake, reboot, whatever comes out. But in the meantime, I hope you guys will check out the movies. If you've never seen them, I hope you'll read this book in particular. Scarlet Gospels kind of surprised me by how much I liked it. I had been looking forward to it for a while since I bought it like 2 years ago, on my honeymoon as a matter of fact, but I just never got around to it, and now I'm glad I did. It was a very solid read, very enjoyable read, and now I guess I'll check out Hellraiser the Toll and whatever comics I can find. We'll see. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the Scarlet Gospels? Put your thoughts and comments down below, guys. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. Would you rate it as high as I did? Why are so many people looking at this and saying it's not good, it's not worthwhile? I'm kind of surprised by that. Again, it's different, but still. I'm going to go look into that a little bit and see what I can find out from people who are haters. Anyway, what are your thoughts, guys? Put them down below. Thank you for watching, everyone, and God bless you. Goodbye.